share talk with us, Professor Kamlesh Chore. He's the head of Department of Biotechnology at AKS University in Satna. He also holds the position of Director of the Center for Research, Innovation, Incubation and Skill Development. His research interests are PGPR study, plant biotechnology, plant diseases, and microbiology. He has several projects that he's been doing, and he's currently working on identifying novel species of medicinal mushrooms. His talk will be on the title of his presentation, Cordyceps militaris, a miraculous fungi having therapeutic potential against emerging diseases. Professor Kamlesh, you're welcome to proceed.
Thank you so much, Professor, for inviting me. And first of all, I would like to thank everyone to be here and for discussing this very important topic related with the emerging disease and other therapeutics for different emerging diseases and infectious diseases. So let me share my screen first. Is it okay? Okay.
It's good to go, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. And today I am just discussing about overviews and some miraculous effect of this particular fungi, which is found in high altitude areas like such as Himalaya and some areas of Europe as well. And this is known as Cordyceps militaris. This fungi is very having very much therapeutic potential related with certain diseases and certain infectious diseases. We should focus on this particular fungi more and more because it can be very much good source for novel therapeutics. Such very important diseases, very important study related with this fungi is very less, and we can explore many therapeutic potential of this particular fungi, and we can be benefited by using it at large level. So I'm just discussing about some aspects related with the therapeutic potential of this fungi with certain emerging diseases such as COVID as well. So as we know, mushrooms are growing everywhere in the worldwide, and many types of mushroom we are eating in our diet, and there are many types of edible mushrooms, and these mushrooms are fleshy, and several species of microfungi, fungi which bear fruiting structures that are large enough to be seen with the naked eye. Edibility may be defined by criteria that include absence of poisonous effect on humans and desirable taste and aroma. Accurate determination and proper identification of such species is the only safe way to ensure its edibility and only safeguard against possible accidents. So some mushrooms that are edible are for most people and can cause allergic reaction in some, and old or improperly stored specimens can be cause food poisoning as well. So these are some types of non-edible and poisonous mushrooms. We can easily identify them against the which are edible mushrooms. Mushrooms having bright color like yellow, blue, brown, red, black, tea with attractive design. These mushrooms should be avoided because these mushrooms may be poisonous. So we should not try to eat these mushrooms because it can be very dangerous for our health. So there are certain mushrooms like button mushrooms which are and oyster mushrooms I will discuss later on, which are very much beneficial for us because they are having very much nutritional properties, like they are having good content of carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and fibers. So these are certain edible mushrooms like Pleurotus florida, yellow oyster, Pleurotus sajer kaju, milky mushroom, pink oyster, Agricus bisporus. These mushrooms are commercially grown by many people and industries and selling out uh, um, in the market, and we are eating very interestingly because these are having very good taste. And so so there are certain medicinal properties are associated with these mushrooms, like they are having immune enhancing effects, antiviral effects, anti-tumor effects, cardiovascular effects, anti-thrombosis effect, anti-inflammatory effects, renal effects, and hypotensive action effects. So that's why mushrooms are uh, now in present situation, the consumption of mushroom is having is increased, and people are very eating it very interestingly because the people who are eating it this kind of mushrooms regularly, they are having their immune system very strong immune system, and they can protect from this emerging virus as well. So this is the mushroom that is very well known, that is Ganoderma lucidum, and it is very well known because some anti-cancer medicines have been made with the help of Ganoderma lucidum, and this because they are having the property to produce triterpenes and polysaccharides, and these are having very important role in enhancement of anti-tumor immunity and other effects related with the disease suppression. So our interest is in Cordyceps militaris, and we are growing this mushroom at in our production facility in our university, and we are growing around 30 to 50 kg per month. And in our association with some of my students and my colleagues are growing at their places as well, and we are making some important product with the help of this mushroom and selling it to the customers, and they are getting benefit. So Cordyceps militaris is most valuable medicinal mushrooms and concerned to the class of Ascomycetes, and mostly used for therapeutic in Southern Asia. So Cordyceps mostly found in North America, Europe, Asia, and in India it is mostly found in subalpine area of grasslands in Himalayas, commonly known as Kida Ghas. And at the latest report about Cordyceps from villages that are Kanul and Satal, Chamoli districts of Uttarakhand. So these are the certain bioactive compounds of C. militaris. It is having a compound that is Cordyceps or Cordycepin, which is having the anti-tumor activity, cyclofurans, which is having antibacterial activity, beta glucan, which is having antibacterial, anti-cancer activity, beta mannans, and L-tryptophan and cordyceps. So that's why this mushroom is now in because people are just attracted to this mushroom because these are having very therapeutic potential. So bioactive compounds of C. militaris is related with the application of cordycepin in healthcare because it improves the oxygen absorption, heart functionality, lowers cholesterol level, boosts immune system, works liver protective, reduce tumor development. And the mechanism action of this cordycepin is that the structure of cordycepin is very much similar to the cellular nucleoside adenosine and acts like a nucleoside analog. So these are the bioactive role of cordycepin. Cordycepin can be act as purine RNA in purine RNA biosynthesis. It can act in cell proliferation, induce apoptosis. Also, it is anti-apoptotic proteins. Is having the capability to reduce the inflammatory responses and metastasis. So immunomodulation by cordycepin. The immunomodulatory effect of cordycepin were observed in studies with respect to delay in tumor growth, and some people, scientists have worked on that cordycepin acts as immunomodulatory agent against the tumor, like facilitating anti-tumor immunity via tumor promoting cell depletion and cytotoxicity lymphocyte enhancements. Cordycepin known to induce apoptosis in human colorectal cancer cell lines by enhancing the protein expression level of JNK and P38 kinase in BCL2 pro-apoptotic molecules. So these kind of reports are present related with the cordycepin, which is protein produced by the cordyceps militaris. Cordycepin also acts as functional food, as a immunobooster, as a free radical scavenger, and many types of cordyceps related products are available, which are selling by many companies on online platforms. What's more with cordycepin, that with all super activities and effects in earlier studies, it was found that cordycepin had shown its inhibitory effect against HIV, influenza virus, and also murine leukemia virus and Epstein-Barr virus. So these properties of cordycepin makes it a potential therapeutic against novel coronavirus too. So we studied some work and in silico study we have done, and so I will discuss it in further slides. So you can see these are the floating body and these are the mycelial growth of this particular fungi, and you can see the growth in submerged culture. So there are certain applications related with this cordycepin related with the pharmaceuticals, functional foods, cosmetics, and other biochemicals. So first aspect of this cordyceps militaris as an immunomodulator to prevent novel coronavirus infection. If we are regularly taking this cordyceps militaris proper dosing, we can enhance immunomodulation in our system and we can prevent the viral infection. So
3 minutes to go.
Yeah, within 2 minutes I'll finish. So you can see here, this is the mechanism action of pathogenesis of this virus, coronavirus, which already discussed by the Dr. Roy earlier in his slides. And in our study, we also targeted this certain protein molecules of this virus, like spike protein and other main protease, and we also studied this particular target with this cordycepin. So yes, the repurposing of particular FDA-approved drugs has become most attractive area to such a potential inhibitor of SARS-CoV, just discussed by the Dr. Gupta in earlier, and many drugs have came out to treat the COVID-19. So in our study, in silico study, we have found that cordycepin was actively inhibited the SARS-CoV-2 proteins, certain proteins like main protease, RBDS complex, and MTase, and RDRP, and nuclease, and NSP10 protein. So we just targeted these proteins of the virus, coronavirus, and we have found good results. And that's why we propose that we can give this particular fungi as a formulation to the patients, so that we prepared a formulation of this fungi and we are just giving it on free of cost to the patients in our area, and they are recovering very fast. And if somebody is taking it in advance, he is also protecting from virus, and if he is getting viral infection, he is cured very soon in comparison to the other person who is not taking this particular cordycepin formulation. And this study is also supported by the work done at CCMB Hyderabad, one company that is, the name of the company is Clone Deals. They are developing certain products, and this company is incubating is in CCMB AIC, and they are producing Corona ad with the help of this cordycepin, and their work has emerged in media at that time, and they are providing this drug and producing this Corona ad as a immunomodulatory drug, immunity booster for the COVID patients, and they are providing it in liquid form to the patient, and they are getting very good results, and their clinical trials also conducting in some medical colleges where the corona patients. So in this way, we are also working. And one other company is Grass Micro. They are also working with the making of formulation with the help of this probiotic bacteria and giving this suspension to the patient. We also worked on the anti-cancerous activity, and we checked out this particular work under MTCC assay, and we have found that cordyceps was reducing certain lung cancer cell line under control condition, and they are reducing the cancer cell line cells under MTCC assay. And we have also performed the assay, and we got very good reduction number of the viable cell count with the help of this cordyceps. Another case study we have done on asthma and allergies, and one of my student, Dr. Charan Singh, is doing this work in Rajasthan and Haryana, and he is developing this certain cordyceps CARDA. I think it is in Hindi, and Hindi is the Indian language. I think many speakers maybe not understand this. And we have taken some patients of asthma, and we have recovered this asthma patient within 2 months after giving this particular dosing, and they have give up their spray or that pump which we use in asthma. So these are the data which supporting that the cordyceps is reducing the asthma effect. So this is the product which we are selling in Rajasthan, Punjab area of India. So that's it. These all are my present, and I'm just covering all these aspects of this miraculous fungi, which is Cordyceps militaris. And I suggest everyone please use this fungi as their regular diet, so that you can prevent from this particular COVID-19 infection. And I assure you that if you are not getting vaccinated in this time, you can use it. You will definitely secure your life with the help of this Cordyceps militaris. Please have it. It is available online. Many companies are selling it. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, doctor.
Right. You went a little bit over time. So please, if there are questions for the current speaker, can you use the chat system to write your questions there, and then you can answer it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The last speaker for this session is Dr. Krishnan Anand. He's a research scientist at the Department of Chemical Pathology at the University of Free State. Now, I'm not sure if all of you know where Free State is. That's in the center of South Africa, slightly northwest from where I am. He works in the Department of Medical Biology before at UKZN, where I am here in Durban. And he was a postdoctoral researcher at the Durban University of Technical Technology in Durban as well. Some awards that he got, and he's got a decent number of publications. His presentation will be small molecules versus exosomes controlling cell-to-cell communication. Dr. Anand, you're welcome to proceed.
Okay, thanks for introduction. Very nice introduction. I'm basically from Durban. Now I'm working in University of Free State. Today I'm going to discuss about small molecule with exosome controlling cell-to-cell communication. This is my topic. Currently I'm working as a research scientist in a chemical pathology department in the School of Pathology in the College of Health Science in the University of Free State. Okay. Before that, I like to discuss about a little bit about basic about nitrogen heterocyclic, which is the main role in making small molecules. So nitrogen's heterocyclic chemistry. This is I was work before interleukin. This is DNA intercalator or protein inhibitor. is containing nitrogen in aromatic ring. It's one of the main heteroatom. Why we focusing on nitrogen heterocyclic? Because of his acting as a base, which is a nucleic acid containing base like purine, iodine, guanidine, thymine, pyrimidine. So we want to prepare the same kind of nuclease, which is it can inhibit DNA and protein, because most of the biological functions, cell functions is DNA and protein. So we want to play with the protein by using this small molecule. Okay. Yeah, this is one of the, we published 2 years before. This is the chloroquinine. I was working with the chloroquinine, modification of chloroquinine by using small starting material by like a sulfur containing starting material and a fluorine containing starting material. So we prepare some of the novel compound which is very good for anti-cancer. So these are the molecule we prepare, which is you can see this. 1 minute. Yeah, you can see this quinine moiety here. We react with this dibenzothiol, creating sulfur, because of sulfur is a very good biological active atom. So we want to create a molecule with the quinine as well as the sulfur. So we're designing the molecule with the sulfur based molecule. Then we focus fluorine containing molecules. So we choose fluorinated starting material. So we did multi-compound reaction by using trifluorobenzoaldehyde. So we did prepare some fluorinated molecule, because of fluorine is highly electronegative, so which is easily bind with the protein. It will play with the protein function. So these are the molecule we designed. Okay. Then we focused on the carbosol molecule, which is the amino carbosol is a very important compound. It's a very good DNA intercalator. But we want to modify. This is the toxic molecule, but we want to modify this amino carbosol by using other molecules. So we prepared this molecule, which is a novel molecule. So we did cancer work with this molecule. So you can see this. We published in +1 channel. Cytotoxic effect of novel synthesis carbosol compound on anti-cancer cells line. It is very good DNA, anti-cancer properties. These are the one of the small molecule, which is the carbosol molecules. The previous slide I discussed about quinine molecule. This one is a carbosol molecule. So these are the molecule I mostly worked during my research. Okay, now you can see. So far, during my PhD, I synthesized molecule, then I tested in cancer cell. Then I started involved to nano formalization. Then same, I took amino carbosol, I reacted with lipoic acid, because I want to create a sulfur compound with my small molecule. Because sulfur molecule can bind with this gold surface, because I want gold nano formulation, because I want to use this gold nanoparticle as a drug delivery. So I synthesize the small molecule. Then I react with I function with the gold nanoparticle and delivering to cells. This is our objective aim of the project. So we did successfully. Then we did biological application. It was when compared to pure compound, the gold formalization less toxicity to normal cells, because that was our aim. Where most of the molecules it will kill the cancer cell, but it also will kill the normal cells. We don't want that one. So that's why we created nano formulation to develop the reducing the toxicity, which I learned from Professor Anil Lab, which is the toxicology research group. So you can see this one of the publication from SES Omega. So we published this article. Okay. Now you can see self-assembly organic nanoparticle. Actually, beginning stage started with the organic nanoparticle, inorganic nanoparticle, which is a gold nanoparticle, silver nanoparticle. Then it's showing cytotoxic with the normal cell, because maybe our internal organ, when it dies, sometimes the metal nanoparticle is accumulated with the body organ, maybe in future will give problem. So that's why we started to design the new project, which is the organic molecule, which is not going to affect any human organ. So this is also aim to develop this project. So suddenly we designed this same molecule with the amino carbosol with the lipoic acid. So now suddenly we we read about some literature survey how to develop organic nanoparticle with this two molecule, which is one is a water soluble, another one water insoluble. So the aminocarbons is a water insoluble, the lipoic acid is a water soluble. So we creating amide coupling reaction. So we create amide bond, then we dissolve with high polar solvent and mix with low polar solvent. Then we develop we giving emulsification reaction for 1 day. It creating organic nanoparticle. You can see the TEM image of the organic nanoparticle, which is only containing aminocarbosol and lipocarbosol. Then you can see the TLS size, particle size range. So this is actually this paper including this paper induction of K-space mediated apoptosis in cancer cell line. So it's including the gold nanoparticle as well as that's organic nanoparticle comparing. So when compared to the gold nanoparticle, this one giving best results. So we publish this article. Okay. Now you can see this slide. What is the exosome? Because whatever I discussed before, these are my research work. Then we realized when I was in a biological lab as a chemist, I learned something biological when reading about article exosome. Then I started a project with the exosome, which is very interesting on bio-nanotechnology. So this exosome is nothing but which is naturally produced from human cells, body fluid. It is in body cells. It's a delivery from body cells. So you can see this is the real image of tissues. You can see cell image here. Exosome is spherical. It's like this is cell membrane. This is you can see the range of 50 nanometer size. This is the SEM image. Okay. What is the exosome composition? What is the biological composition of exosome? You can see this is a spherical particle which is made up with the lipids and the protein. The surface of the exosome is made up with protein and lipids, and inside the spherical particle you can see microRNA, mRNA, non-coding RNA, DNA, nucleic acid, and you can see some cytokinase factors. And then you can see a lot of like a biological genetic biomolecules, which is containing hits of proteins like a 17, 20, 60. So that means cells something delivering when the cells is dividing or cells is forming. The exosome is releasing from one cell to another cells. That means the exosome something carrying parent cell to donor cell to receptor cell. So if you isolate this exosome and characterize the exosome, we can find the exact biomechanism in the cells. Okay. What are the applications? Here a variety of applications coming up. One is the biomarkers and the target therapy and the delivery. So we can use as a delivery vehicle. One more that we can use as a biomarker because it is releasing from cells, so it is surely carrying biomarkers, which is iso, microRNA, non-coding RNA. This is the biomarkers. We can characterize the biomarker. We can find out that this is biomarkers. So we can use the target because the exosome containing proteins and surface protein. So then we can maybe this exosome also problem too. For example, if we take cancer cells, the cancer cells dividing, the cancer cell dividing time, it is affecting the normal cells. So that means it is delivering the exosome, cancer exosome. It will attack to normal cells. That means it is carrying the cancer genetic to normal cells. So if you isolate the exosome surface, whatever is the biological molecule, we can target that biological molecule. We can inhibit that exosome. To stop that transformation, cell-to-cell communication. So same exosome we can isolate, we can use as a drug delivery because most of the drug delivery people are using liposome, polymeric nanoparticle. So these are the spherical synthetic nanoparticle, but we can use the exosome also as a drug delivery agent because the exosome containing some surface protein, maybe the protein have property to interact with the cell surface protein. This is a key and lock method. Because it naturally is forming from the cell, so we no need to modify the surface. Now you can see this slide. This compound is genetic compound cell. The neticonus cells is one of the molecules, one of the drug molecules which is approved from Japanese. They're using this molecule, it's a fungal infection. Okay, you can see this molecule inhibiting exosome secretion, because when a long-acting antifungal agent, okay, this is acting as an antifungal, so this is a fungal disease they're using. So designed by this molecule designed by exosome surface proteins. Okay, this is a commercial, but only so far I read the literature survey, they using Japanese only using, not FDA, okay, not US people, only Japanese only using. Okay, but so many exosome therapeutics coming up, FDA approving clinical trial coming up in future. Exosome is one of the playing role in the pharma industry. Okay. Okay, now you can see this is the exosome.
Sorry, you got 3 minutes to go. 3 minutes to go.
Okay, bro. Oh, this is the exosome tetraphin CD protein. You know, I told you exosome has surface protein. This is one of the protein CD81. This is a tetraphin protein. This is playing important role transmembrane protein. So my project is to inhibit this protein to stop the exosome to deliver. Communicating the cell to cell. Okay, this is my project. Okay, you can see one of the paper we published, experimental theoretical study to discover a novel biomarker of exosome. So we're designing the molecule to inhibit this protein. Okay, you can see the same. We developed a new Cullinan derivative, which is very, very binding active functional group like hydroxyl group, sulfur group, acid group. So we developed this project. We did develop this molecule. We modify the molecule with the aminothiol group, aromatic group. So we developed a planar compound, which is a protein inhibitor. Okay, so this was the molecule inhibiting the CD81 protein surface. Okay, so these are the theoretical studies we did. Then I was in a lab. They are working with the mycotoxin. So they mostly working with the fusaric acid. So what I thought, okay, we take the fusaric acid instead of buying it, we developing new compound. I modify this molecule with the phenylic hydroxine, with the different phenylic hydroxine. So I use this new molecule to inhibit the other protein, which is a HSP19 in a exosome cell derivative protein. So I inhibit this protein. We study theoretical study. We did protein inhibiting studies and simulation we did. You can see this graphical the picture info feature. You can see this is the cancer cells is delivering exosome. So when an exosome is releasing in the cells, we focusing the HSP. This is proteins playing important role in cancer message transfer to normal cells. We targeting the protein, we inhibiting the protein by using our small molecule. That means indirectly we stopping the cancer communication to normal cells. Okay, you can see this slide. This is the cancer cell. This is the blood vessels. This is the normal cell. You can see exosome releasing. It is releasing the blood vessels. It is traveling through blood vessels. Around with the blood cells. Maybe is try to look normal cell to deliver this cancer message to normal cells. So if you focus on the exosome, if you focus on the protein, if you inhibit the protein, the exosome function will stop. That means the exosome not going to transfer the message cancer cell to normal cells. This is our project aim. So we did theoretically and experimentally. Okay, now, those are my research. Now compare with the exosome and the COVID-19, something similar is there. You can see exosome size and the COVID virus size is the same. Both are spherical, almost same. Like you can see the size 100 nanometer. Also, the exosome have also ACE2 receptor, RNA. They have also RNA. Something. So you can image. You can think something. Exosome have some relation between COVID virus. Okay. Then means exosome. When the virus attacking, maybe the recovered patient, they have releasing the lungs fluid, the blood. It will release the exosome. Maybe the exosome carrying new biomarkers, the COVID biomarkers. So we can find, if you isolate the exosome from the patient or a recovered patient, we can find new biomarkers, exosome-based biomarkers. Okay. You can see this is recently I published an article recently just to weeks before, you can see the novel therapeutics using convalescent plasma derived exosome for COVID-19 combined hyperactive immune and immune modulation. So actually, when Africa affected by Ebola virus, the covalent plasma derived, plasma therapy is playing important role that time. That is, the plasma therapies control the Ebola virus. But my idea too, the plasma derived exosomal, maybe if you isolate the exosome, we characterize the exosome because the exosome carrying microRNAs and non-coding RNA. Okay, so maybe that exosome, that recovered patient exosome, may be carrying some new genetic matter, so we can develop the new vaccine based on exosome. Okay, this is, yeah, you can see that the graphical picture. This is the recovered patient. Okay, so COVID in recovered patient, we are isolating COVID convalescent plasma, we are isolating the exosome, which is we don't know what's inside. Maybe it's carrying a exact biomarkers or exact genetic matter for developing a new vaccine. So we characterize the exosome, we formulating with the microRNA, we formulating with the exosome with the microRNA, so we can develop that vaccine which is can incubate. Okay, this concept coming from reverse vaccinology technology. Okay, so reverse vaccinology technology creating this innovation. This concept. Okay. Okay, so exosome in the future is exosome playing important role. I know I told you exosome is going to play important role by a pharma company. So the so many product coming up. You can see all the company involved in that project. Okay, these are the reference. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to start our session 2 of the day 2, and myself, Professor Kamlesh Shore, and I am just sharing this session with Dr. Subhasis. I think he is here. Dr. Subhasis.
I am here.
Yeah. So
yes, I am here.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So on behalf, So now on behalf of this organizing committee of this particular conference, now we are going to start this session 2 of the day 2 of this conference. And in this particular session, we have our eminent invited speakers, Dr. Aditi Singh, Dr. Raghavendra Swamy, Dr. Rajiv Mishra. So first of all, I would like to invite Dr. Aditi Singh. He is Associate Professor in MIT Institute of Biotechnology, MIT University, Lucknow campus, India. Dr. Aditi Singh has completed her master's from Allahabad University and doctoral degree from King George Medical University, Lucknow. Her work on pathogenesis of Japanese encephalitis virus during doctoral research, and Dr. Singh has been granted financial assistance from SERB. Dr. Singh has over 20 years of research and teaching experience and published more than 40 papers, 10 chapters, and 1 patent. She guided PhD students, 3 completed and 3 ongoing PhD students under her. Dr. Singh's current area of research interest is various approaches to combat antibiotic resistance in drug-resistant common pathogens with focus on bacteriophage therapy. She had also worked on characterization of probiotics and their potential against escape pathogens, elucidating of active compounds from natural resources, oxidative stress, and oral cancer. She is editorial member and reviewer of many international journals of repute. Dr. Singh is member of Microbiology Society of UK, International Consortium of Bacteriophage Research, Indian Science Congress, Indian Association of Medical Microbiology UP chapters. So now I heartily welcome Dr. Aditi Singh. She is going to deliver a talk on fast-derived protein for gram-negative MDR pathogens, a potential alternative. Dr. Aditi, please.
Before I start my presentation, first give me I extend my gratitude to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to just present my this thought on bacteriophages and their application and their potential. So should I be doing the share screen option? So antimicrobial resistance, as I'm telling you that since we have the antibiotics, they have come up, and it is one of the discovery of for the mankind which has saved, I think, more lives than ever during World War One and all. But this rapid and excessive use of these antibiotics, they have caused the problem of antibiotic resistance, and which has now become as a major public threat, public health threat. And WHO has already declared it as one of the top 10 global public health threats which is facing humanity. So this is one thing which is very, very significant, and it is really concerning to all the scientific world and to all the life sciences people and to all the doctors and everyone. And as you can see, the situation is really grim, and the profile and the available antibiotics, they are becoming less and less for us to have this. So uh, some of the problems like this why this serious problem and this grave situation has started, it is due to the excessive use in all fields, not only in medical, not only as the therapeutic, but using antibiotics for all various aspects like the environmental, even especially in animal or in agriculture, in veterinary, everywhere the use of antibiotics is so rampant, it is very high, and that is majorly causing issues in medical field or in for human beings. If we say that the major problem for this antimicrobial resistance is the inappropriate use of these antibiotics. These are some of the points which are given very broadly, that when we do not use antibiotics, still the excessive use of that has caused this much of problem, or the problem is becoming or increasing day by day. So it is a challenge with the spread of this multi-drug resistance, and as you can see, the tackling of such multi-drug resistance is entirely different and than the normal infections, or in case of any drug resistant organism becomes very critical and very that's it becomes very significant that how to tackle such problem. As you can see, the available the available medications, the costing, everything increases with this drug resistance. So what is the need of R? The need of R is to have alternate therapy and alternate options and alternate methods which can look at this aspect in a very, very significant manner. So there have been many many thoughts and many options and many ways which are coming up. One of them are the phages or the bacteriophages. So bacteriophages, they are the viruses that parasitize bacteria, and they are specifically which are infecting the bacteria. So we all know that. And these bacteriophages, why they become very interesting to look at? Because of the ubiquitous presence of these bacteriophages. So they are present everywhere on this planet, from glaciers to ocean bed, and phages are present everywhere. They are very another thing significant is that they are very specific to their host bacteria. They target usually a single bacterial strain, though little bit of cross reactivity is being reported, but majorly they are specific for one, sometimes to one strain even of the species. uh, in India, if we talk of the Indian context, the river Ganga is becoming very, a potential source for the various types of studies, and a lot of FARD study has been initiated in Ganga waters, and it is seen that it consists of 3 times more phages than the bacteria which is present, as well as the Ganga water contains much more phage species and phages than Yamuna and other rivers, and that is thought to be one of the reason for the the higher qualities of this holy river which we have in here. This is one of the picture which is seen, and it has been reported that as many as 1100 or more than that different types of phage species, they have been isolated from this Ganga water. And as I have seen in one of the recent paper that it is also hypothesized that the phages which are isolated from Ganga can be, looked for this COVID also. So what is this bacteriophage therapy? How we can, utilize it? So the bacteriophage therapy is not new. It has been used since more than a century, we can say. So the use of bacteriophage to treat bacterial infection was first time, which we can say substantially projected or reported was by Felix Drl, who into 1921 has reported that phages can be used against this bacterial infection and infectious, pathogens. Especially he has used against cholera and plague and has found very good results, and that is one of the first reported. So how these bacteriophages they affect the bacteria, or they can be utilized for the therapy. So first we will have to see that aspect. So phages they infect the bacteria in two ways, which is lysogenic or lytic method. For their replication, we all know that this a virus, and it's the host is the bacterial cell. So two ways it can multiply inside it. One is by lysogeny, where it goes and the genetic material it combines with the host, and then it replicates. And whenever the favorable conditions are there, then they can release the particles are formed, may be formed, may not be formed. This is one of the method it has been found. This lysogenic cycle is to deliver new characteristics and new traits to the host, which is sometimes some of the antibiotic resistant genes even. But the other type, which is the lytic cycle, what happens in lytic cycle is that the bacteria specifically binds with the host and releases its genetic material, and then it uses the host machinery to make many particles, and then they lyse the bacterial cell. So that's why they're called as lytic phages. So these are this aspect, or the lytic phages are the ones which are being seen, which are being studied for the phage therapy. So 98% of the phages they have been found to be of the lytic cycle type, and very few are lysogenic type. But these lysogenic, they are in fact beneficial to the bacteria. They transfer different types of additional traits to the bacterial cell, whereas lytic ones they are harmful and they kill the bacteria. So basically, the phage therapy is targeted towards these, are looking at the lytic phages. So and another thing which I've already mentioned is that phages are specific. They are infectious only to the bacteria that carry their complementary receptor. Definitely, that's why they are specific, and therefore, so it is gaining attention in medicine or in clinical field because of targeting these multi-drug resistant organism, or the superbugs you can call them, or the various types of drug resistant organisms, or common pathogens which are becoming drug resistant and which are becoming very notorious, and we're not able to find solutions in a very solid manner. Another aspect of these phages are the phage derived proteins, or the proteins or the enzymes which these phages produce. So these endolysins, these are the enzymes which phages produce as a part of their life cycle, or as a part of their reproduction. So endolysins or lysins, they are part of their lytic cycle. It is required when these phages they need to get released from the host. So these lysins they are helpful for the virus in degrading the peptidoglycan layer of the host bacteria to release the
Dr. Aditi.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Time is escaping. Please go fast.
Okay,
Within,
okay. So I'll very quickly just Okay. Yeah. So this is further on endolysins. So since these endolysins they have shown very good, they have also been found to be very good alternative, where these purified products can be used against these bacteria, not the whole phages. That can also be one of the approach. And specific endolysins they have been isolated and identified and characterized. So we have very preliminarily started with the work on bacteriophages, and we have isolated. So I'll not go too much into the detail for the methodology and all. And I'm very happy to say that one of my students will be presenting under the postgraduate student competitive category. He will be explaining more on the methodology and on these phage isolation and all. We have not gone further into it, but some very promising results they have come up, where we have been able to isolate specific different phages against E. coli, where we have also used the clinical isolates with the in collaboration with the hospital here in the microbiology department of this government hospital, and we have taken the clinical isolates, used those clinical isolates, and we've got some very good results against E. coli as well as against Salmonella. So Salmonella again is a very, very notorious organism, and you all know that. So we've got these phages. We are yet to, proceed further in this due to a lot of these problems. The work is very much stalled at present. So the future prospect is definitely using these phages or looking at these phages and phage-derived proteins against these pathogens. And almost the world over, the studies have been done on all escape pathogens and then other common nosocomial and opportunistic pathogens, where the phages have been utilized in various ways. There are many monophage therapy or a cocktail, or combining them with the antibiotics, or deriving the proteins from them. So they all are the very potential, some of the very potential fields where these phages they can be used. Though there are no actual phage therapy products, some clinical trials are almost underway and at phase 1, phase 2 level, but no as such product is available in the market. Maybe very recently some topical application may have come, but not as such for oral consumption or something. But in food industry, they've been used in various ways, and they are used against common pathogens as for the removal of these pathogens in food industry. So this is just very quickly going through with the aspect. Thank you so much. So I'll have to how to unshare it. Okay. Is it unshared, or do I have to?
Yeah,
Okay,
Dr.
thank
Singh, have you found any phase that congees the Mycobacterium tuberculosis?
So I'm not working on Mycobacterium tuberculosis as of now, but there are many reports which have already done work on Mycobacterium. But me personally, am not working on, because my lab is not authorized for that. So I can't work on
Okay, it's
Mycobacterium.
okay.
But there are many reports, yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Aditi, and it was very nice, excellent talk, and very remarkable and demanding work that is needed for to control the multi-drug resistant organisms. So please continue this work, and we hope for new findings will definitely helpful to measure scientific world in the future. So there is a other question. Somebody want to ask question? Please write in the Q&A box.
Yeah.
And if you are having any answer from the Dr. Singh, please write in the Q&A box. Dr. Singh is available with us. He will answer you in the Q&A box.
Yeah,
And
I'll be
now,
answering
yeah,
so that we can proceed
yeah,
with the next.
yeah.
And
So
and,
thank you
uh,
so
and
much.
let me congratulate on the great work you have presented, sir. It was very promising.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, organizers, for the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Now we are moving towards our next speaker. Can I have the introductory slide? Yeah. So our next speaker is Dr. Rajiv Mishra. He is assistant professor and head department of biosciences in Manipal University, Jaipur. He obtained his PhD from Central Drug Research Institute, that is very well known as CDRI CSIR Institute, Lucknow. Yeah. He worked as a project scientist, Cedars Sinai Medical Center, California, USA, and School of Medicine, Japan. He has more than 18 years scientist in cancer drug discovery, research and therapeutic resistance. 25 plus papers in almost all top cancer journals, which include Cancer Cell, Oncogene, Cancer Research, Cancer Science, and Journal of Clinical Investigation. He has made significant contributions in the area of regulation of gene expression and its link to disease and therapeutics. He is not only elucidating the mechanism of transcription regulation through the epigenetic modifications, but also targeting them to the design new generation diagnostics as well as therapeutics. He also served as associate editor of Clinical Cancer. So not much taking time, I'm just inviting Dr. Rajiv Mishra to present his topic on COVID-19 prevalence in lung cancer subtypes, therapeutic opportunities, challenges. Dr. Rajiv, please. Yes, please continue, sir.
Yeah, very good evening to all of you. Just please help me and let me know whether my slides are visible and I'm also audible.
Yeah.
Okay. So very good evening to all of you. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizer and my special thanks to the Professor Dilip Tiwari for inviting me or for accommodating me in this your wonderful conference. I'm very fortunate that I was being a part of the first conference as well, and consecutively I'm going to deliver my talk and share my work in the second talk as well. So today I'm going to talk about the COVID-19 prevalence in lung cancer subtype, therapeutic opportunities and challenges. As here at Manipal, we are running a cancer research lab. So today I'm going to present a work which is, like all know that we are in a lockdown and labs are closed. So here today I'm going to some the computational analysis that how lung cancer patient can be helpful, and by understanding those analysis we may come up with the better options for the therapeutic. So here just I would like to take you the places where I have been worked. Like this is CDRI, which is in Lucknow, and then thereafter in 2007 I have been in Nihon University School of Medicine in the middle, and after that I have been in project scientist in Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Los Angeles, California, which is one of the Hollywood hospital. So I have been worked there for 7.5 years, and after that I moved to Manipal University, Jaipur, where I am heading one cancer research lab at Manipal. Now coming to the today's topic. So virus is known to us, or virus is older than us, and during the evolution they are the first one who was being found as a live cell. So, and for the human they have been problematic for the not today but earlier as well. So this has been in a very simple layman terminology we can describe. There is one definition of the virus which I like most, that Jean and Peter Medworth told that virus is a simply piece of bad news wrapped in a protein. So they are means just bringing you a bad news, that's it. And apart from this, if you look here, there is a this is the structure of the SARS-CoV, and this has and they are made up of the DNA or RNA. And one thing you should surprisingly knowing that basically RNA virus is most deadly virus in comparison to the DNA, because RNA contains the RNA also have the enzyme activity which doesn't require the protein to work on, and it also works. They have the protein code and they have the envelope, and one of the most important thing, they cannot replicate outside a host. That's why they are known as the facultative parasite. When you look virus here, I just make a slide which give you how small they are and what this small is mean to us. Like here you can see this is a hair follicle, human hair, and there you can see, and if you measure the dust and pollen, they are around less than 10 micrometer, and bacteria cell are much smaller than size, and they are around 2.5 micrometer diameter, and they generally their genetic material they can replicate. But viruses are so small that they cannot replicate. This is one of the reasons that they cannot replicate because of their small size they are unable to replicate into the outside environment. However, similarly, you can see bacteria can replicate, but viruses cannot. So this might be a reason. That's why they move into the, you can range them into the nanoscale, and this is the reason why, this might be a reason why viruses are cannot replicate without host. Now, coming to the COVID-19, you all know now it has been scientifically proven that COVID-19 is an airborne virus, and it has been generally inserted into the human body to the upper respiratory tract, so just behind the your nose, and where it replicate and start the initial infection for more than 3 or 4 days, and after that, if this replication is successful, then it enters into your lungs, and where it's caused various problems like ARDS, cytokine storm, and many more. Then it's become a major challenge to tackle this COVID-19. It was when it reaches in the lung. Here I'm showing a picture which is taken by the Array lab, and here you can see how this brown color COVID-19 viruses are infecting our alveolar cells or epithelial cells. And so today, as this virus is one of the major site of infection is lungs, and you all know that one of the receptor which is known as the ACE receptor. ACE receptor is the entry point of this virus, where this virus can enter into the host cells or lung cells. Now, coming to the being working in the cancer biology area, cancer patient is always been a soft target for any type of disease if the comorbidity, they are associated with the comorbidity. And then this virus infection lead them more susceptible towards the any type of infection. If because lungs is the primary organ or the primary site for this SARS-CoV-2, so here I prefer to estimate how this ACE receptor is expression is affecting in case of the lung cancer. Here, when you see the estimated new cases, lung cancer is always top, the second most cancer after the prostate in the males, and in the females it has been the after the breast. Lung cancer is known that every day the estimated new cases are very high. And also in case of when you're talking about the deaths, lung cancer in male and female, in both cases, deaths are more high in case of the lung cancer. So this makes more vulnerable to the lung cancer patient. When we classify the lung cancer is basically, you can divide into two types. One is a non-small cell lung cancer carcinoma, which is around 85%, and then there is a small cell lung carcinoma, which is around 15%. Here, I would like to zoom in with the non-small cell lung carcinoma, and in that, if you can see that there's a two major type of carcinoma. One is adenocarcinoma, which is around 40%, and another one is squamous cell carcinoma. So basically, these two type of cancer, which is commonly called lung LUAD and LUSC, these are two the most prominent cancer in lung cancer. Now, to help on that which among these classification LUAD or LUSC, which one is more susceptible? Which patient more susceptible toward the SARS-CoV-2 infection? So this analysis be from one of the published findings, that's Yang et al. Aging. He published his paper in Aging Journal in 2020. They found that when this is the OncoMind dataset. OncoMind dataset is a very good database where you can see any gene expression and it's how it is, whether it's overexpressing in the cancer or not. Here, pink means this is overexpressing, and the blue means down expression. So you can see that in case of lung cancer, they are mostly overexpressing. It means that in the lung cancer patient, ACE receptor is highly expressing. So this makes a sense that lung cancer patients are more vulnerable towards the SARS-CoV-2 infection because the ACE expression is high, and that's why it will allow more gates to enter into the lung cells. We further zoom in with the LUAD and LUSC, you will find that compared to the normal, the lung adenocarcinoma is significantly overexpressing is ACE expression. So what does it tell? This tells us that among the LUSC and LUAD, the LUAD patients are more susceptible. Because why we are telling this? We are telling because of ACE receptor expression. Now, after this, there's one interesting thing is some in vitro study has been performed by the same group, and they showed that when you in vitro, when you infect the kidney cells or mice lung cells, the ACE receptor is downregulated. So this also further makes disease more complicated, that ACE receptor is downregulated. So what is the consequence of the ACE receptor? Here, you all know that you may heard about the cytokine storm. So basically, this SARS-CoV-2 virus is how it is going to damage the epithelial by causing, or by this viral infection, these lead to the activation of the dendritic cells and the macrophages. They further secrete the various interleukins, which further activate some of the natural killer cells, innate leukocyte cells, and further activating the helper T cell into the helper T cell 1. And after that, it further increase the IFN gamma, TNF alpha, IL-1, IL-2, releasing a cytokine storm, which further damage your lungs epithelial cells. So now the question, what does it mean? That because ACE is good for the lung cells, and when it's get damaged, what is the consequence of this damage into the lung epithelial cells? That's what you all know, that when it's downregulate, it's causing lung edema, and that lead to the ARDS. Here we use one of the Chimer database, which analyze how a tumor microenvironment, how the tumor microenvironment is infiltrating with the some of the various interleukins or various cytokine or some of the immune cells, how the immune cells are getting attracted towards the tumor microenvironment. So what is the tumor microenvironment? Tumor microenvironment contains the cancer cells, stromal cells, and various immune infiltrates. So the study which I performed, that how this ACE receptor is responsible for this tumor immune infiltrates, how the immune cells is causing in different type of either lung carcinoma or lung adenocarcinoma, and this tumor microenvironment is very much affecting your therapeutic process. Here from the Chimer database, what I found, that when we did the lung adenocarcinoma, this is the heat map which we showed we analyzed the ACE receptor, how this ACE receptor is attracting the immune cells at the tumor microenvironment site. Here you can see that in lung adenocarcinoma, you can see that all the blue line, blue means the negative regulation. In negative regulation means that when ACE receptor is there, these immune cells they are not invited by they are protected at that site. But similarly, in case of lung squamous cell carcinoma, you will find that most of the time you can see there is a red expression, means positive regulation. Positive regulation means they are inviting the immune cells at the site. So what does it tell? It tells that ACE receptor in lung adenocarcinoma is playing is very important, which inhibit the cytokine storm. So if some patient with lung adenocarcinoma, they are affected with the SARS-CoV-2, they might be more chances or more vulnerable towards the cytokine storm. So from this bioinformatics or the computational analysis, we can conclude that they are much more prone towards the cytokine storm. And accordingly, the therapy for the lung adenocarcinoma patient need to be calibrated. And where from our database, we find that lung squamous cell carcinoma, as the receptor goes down, there might be chances of the cytokine storm is very less, which tells this information is not only helps the clinician to better treat with the lung adenocarcinoma patient, and lung adenocarcinoma, and thereby reducing the severity. So overall, as I'm the last presenter, I think, of this conference, so you might be heard the Ed Young 7 blind mice story, where every mice goes one at a time, and then understanding that what this creature is. So similar way, we all need to pile up all the information, and when we pile up the information, we may end this problem, and that might be end of this COVID-19. And having said so, thank you very much for your time, and I'm very happy if anyone has any question to take it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajiv, and it was an excellent talk. And I think we must have some questions from the audience side. Is there any question? I think nobody is interested. And if you want to ask any question, just want to let you know that all audience, you may ask question in Q&A. Dr. Rajiv will be available with us. He may answer later on that question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr.
Have a
Rajiv.
great evening to all of you. Bye.
Yeah, welcome all of you. And in this competition and oral presentation session for Research Scholar Award, there are, I think, seven scholars are going to present their work. And because the time is limited, so I would suggest to finish your presentation within 3 minutes, and we will have 1 minute question answer session. So,
Dr. Chore, now for 5 minutes. Please give the 5 minute for talk.
Okay, no issue, not issue. Actually, I just want to. I'm just seeing the watch, and actually, it's 7:30, and we have to finish till 7:50.
Maybe they have already prepared it for 5 minutes. So yeah, since it's a competition, yeah.
Okay, we will provide 5 minutes, and now I'm just inviting our first research scholar, Ms. Shreya Shah. She is with us, and she's going to give a talk on plant-based antimicrobial peptides as therapeutics. Yes, Shreya, you may go. All the best.
Thank you, sir. I'm just sharing my screen. The topic of my talk is plant-based antimicrobial peptides as therapeutics. AMPs. AMPs are diverse group of natural bioactive molecules. They play a crucial role in host defense mechanism. AMPs display broad spectrum antimicrobial activities. They play a significant role as immune modulators, antihypertensive molecules, anti-cancer, antifungal, antiviral, and anti-tumor agents. A variety of plant species produces AMPs. The ever-ascending number of drug-resistant plant and animal pathogens has pushed researchers to search for novel peptides which can be utilized as alternatives to chemical antibiotics. There are various factors for classification, numerous factors responsible for classification of family of plant AMPs, such as sequence homology of primary structure, pattern of disulfide bonds, charges on molecules, structural scaffold, molecular weight, structure, mechanism of actions, etc. There are mainly 6 classes of plant AMPs. Going on to first class of plant AMPs, defensins. These peptides are characterized as smaller peptides which exhibit inhibitory activity against numerous bacterial pathogens of animals and fungi. They are found abundantly in seeds. NMR spectroscopy revealed their 3-dimensional structure, which includes 3 strands, anti-parallel beta sheets, and 1 alpha helix following a beta-alpha-beta-beta pattern with 8 cysteine residues forming 4 disulfide bridges that stabilize the characteristic cysteine-stabilized alpha-beta motif. A highly conserved alpha-beta conformation of defensins interacts with negatively charged membrane lipids, which increase permeability of cell membrane, thus causing cell death. Apart from antimicrobial action, defenses also respond towards biotic stress and are vital for growth regulation and development. Recently, a novel plant defensin, HXP124, having potent antifungal activity against dermatophytes and non-dermatophyte modes, was tested for a clinical trial in treating onychomycosis. Some plant defenses such as phaseococcine, sesquine, and lunatuzine also exhibit inhibition towards HIV. Second class of plant AMPs are thionines. They represent a family of smaller cysteine-enriched peptides. Family includes alpha-1 and beta-purothionines, alpha and beta-hordothionines, Pyrularia pubera toxin, viscotoxin, etc. These peptides possesses antimicrobial activity against several gram-positive and gram-negative plant pathogenic bacteria and also some phytopathogenic fungi. The first AMP discovered was purothionine from wheat flour. The alpha-beta thionines have a fold with two helices, alpha helices, and a short anti-parallel beta sheet and conserve disulfides bonds. Thionines interact through charged residues, causing membrane disruption or binds DNA through the structural helix-turn helix motif, leading to cell death. The third class of plant AMPs are cyclotides. They are cyclic peptides
Shreya, you
having
have 1 minute. 1 minute.
Okay.
1 minute more.
And have cyclic cysteine knot motif. The cyclotides also exhibit anti-tumor, anti-HIV, and nematicidal, hemolytic, and insecticidal activities. Two more classes of the plant AMPs are present: lipid transfer proteins, snakins, and hevins. The mechanism of action of all plant AMPs are almost similar. The electrostatic interaction between cationic residues of AMPs with the negatively charged plasma membrane cause membrane disruption. The penetration of AMP inside the membrane of pathogen has been depicted by four models: toroidal pore model, barrel stave model, carpet model, aggregate channel model. Upon penetration inside a cell, AMP exhibits several functions like inhibition of synthesis of DNA, mRNA, etc. Besides targeting a variety of metabolic processes inside the organism, AMP also modulate immune cells by stimulating cytokine production, activating natural killer cells, etc. Conclusion: the gigantic pool of plant AMPs having varied amino acid composition and diversified structures can exhibit potent broad-spectrum antimicrobial activities. The increasing availability and use of innovative computer-assisted design strategies have considerable potential to boost the discovery of next-generation therapeutic peptides. Also, several AMPs are currently undergoing clinical trials validating the therapeutic benefits of these novel candidates, promising market authorization of new AMP-based drugs as valuable natural alternatives to conventional antibiotics for curing human diseases in near future. The future perspectives of plant AMPs are in silico methods like sequence optimization
Your
of
time
motifs.
is over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now
Yeah,
now I have to
conclude in one
conclude.
line. Whatever you said, Shreya, please conclude in one
Yeah.
line. Already we are running
Advanced
shortage
vaccine
of time.
drug delivery systems, use of nanotechnology for targeted therapy can serve as promising alternatives for the development of AMPs that may substitute traditional antibiotics in the future. Thank you so much for your valuable time and patience.
Any one question from audience or any query? Okay, thank you, Shreya.
Thank you. Thank you.
Daksha, please hold on. We have to ask the question before she get left because it's a competition. Same trend we have to follow for others. At least one question must be there.
Okay.
If you would like to ask, please you may ask.
Okay, Shreya, tell me, like, are you working in this area in your lab?
No, sir, we are not working, but we have published a paper on this topic: plant-based antimicrobial peptides as therapeutics. And the topic on this HeriCure International Conference was based on the same principle that a drug or commodities related that.
So is it a paper or a review, Shreya?
I have one question. Shreya.
Yes.
See, if you have heard today's morning talk, there was an caution that whenever you are having any peptides, you need to do a plasma treatment. So
Yes.
that would give the stability. So how will you answer this problem to your experiments?
Yeah, sir, many tests have been going on to check the stability. That's why in future perspectives slide, I shared that in silico technique and even coating of these peptides will help in longer stability of these peptides.
I expected that.
Nanotechnology, encapsulation
See,
of
I
these
expect. See,
peptides.
normally what happens is that the peptide, these enzymes, now they're very specific. So they must be looking at some particular amino acid at the terminal end to chew it off. So
Yes,
any
yes.
amino acid that can be modified such a way that its peptide will remain stable. Plus, one more caution is that usually many of the peptides can trigger various kind of harmonic receptors. So how will you map that your peptide will not interfere in this process? So this is also another thing you should be taking into consideration.
Okay, okay, sir. I will note this point.
Okay, you are going to work on this area. Yeah.
Yeah, we are planning to move on this area.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. It was nice presentation. Now we are
Thank
moving
you.
towards our next student, such is called Mr. Saurabh Singh Gaur, and he's going to present work on potential bioactivity of cordyceps militaris against viability of lung cancer cell line A549. Saurabh, please.
My topic is potential bioactivity of Cordyceps militaris against viability of cancer cell line. So now my first slide is cancer. The number of people suffering from cancer in the world will continue to grow. According to the latest report about the trend of global cancer released by the World Health Organization, it is estimated that number of newly increased cancer patients will be reached 19 million or even more 2025. Cancer is the second killer of human death in the world. Basically, the most common treatment of cancer and its side effects. Most common therapy are used for the treatment of cancer. First one is chemotherapy and radiotherapy. There have several side effects of these therapies. So what is alternate? This is a lung cancer, all about the lung cancer. These are risk factors, symptoms, and test of particular lung cancer, and these are the treatment. So this is our Cordyceps militaris bioactive compound and their key facts of the Cordyceps militaris. Cordyceps militaris is a potential biometabolite for the herbal drug, and evidence are available about its application for the various system of the body for the ancient time. This mushroom is found in the Himalayan region of South Asia countries, traditionally originated from India at Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. It is normally inhibited on the surface of insect pupa in winter and leading to the formation of fruiting body in summer. It contains a novel biometabolite called cordycepin, which has very potent anti-cancer and antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity. This Indian traditional medicine mushroom cordyceps species is used to treat several kinds of diseases like cough, chronic bronchitis, respiratory disorder, kidney disorder, cancer, anemia, high cholesterol, liver disorder, and weakness. What is cordycepin? Cordycepin is a biometabolite of Cordyceps militaris mushroom, and it is also known as 3-deoxyadenosine is alternative of the nucleoside adenosine. And what is the role of cordycepin in the treatment of cancer? So cordycepin activate protein kinase which blocks the activity of mammalian targeted rapamycins, and this complex was some unknown mechanism. Recently, the molecular interaction study revealed that the cordycepin has a strong binding affinity which SARS-CoV domain of spike protein. It can say that the cordyceps have ability to cure corona also. This is a pathway of how is it work. This is our research pipeline. Production of this is all about my research work I have done in my lab. First of all, I have production of cordyceps species in under control condition. Then I have prepare its extract. After that, analysis of column chromatography and perform SPTLC. And finally, the measuring of concentration of cordycepin. I have performed SPLC analysis. After that, I have performed MGT cell viability assay. This is an extraction method of bioactive compound for the column chromatography I have used for the extraction. And then after I have concentrated the fractions will be isolated, and after that this concentrated bioactive compound in tube. This is SPTLC analysis. I have used SPTLC analysis for finding these chromatograms during my research. I have using different solvent for the different fraction during SPTLC, and the F1 to F10 are tested test solution unknown sample. F11 F12 is the
Saurabh,
yes.
quick, you have 1 minute. Yeah. Quick.
Okay, sir. Then after I have performed SPLC and find this cordycepin 1.4 microgram per mg. After that, I have test MTT has performed for these are the result of MTT assay. Viable cell reduce the trizolium salt to pharmazole resulting in blue color, whereas dead cell will not showing any color. The concentration of different fraction used for the different concentration, and the result is showing here. This is a graphical representation of cell viability assay with a different fraction of cordycepin extract when concentration is increased, thus the cell viability is decreased. Where the 0.25, 0.51 and 2 microliter use extract for the viability of cancer cell line. This is showing the graphical representation of cell viability assay with a different concentration of DMSO, also showing the cell viability with the DMSO. This is viable cell reduce the trizolium salt and pharmazone resulting in the blue color, whereas dead cell will not showing any color. This all tests for performing MTT assay was conducted at AIIMS Bhopal. So finally, I will say that the cordyceps have a potential to fight against cancer cell line. On the basis of our research, we are designing a cordyceps based formulation for the cancer treatment. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Saurabh.
Saurabh, and yeah. Now question. Any question from audience side or?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Saurabh,
Yes, sir.
yeah, I have a question. Is that in your essay, I was seeing you are writing like 0.25 microliter, 0.5 microliter. So what is that 0.5 microliter? So what's the concentration that you are using? Because anything without that, yeah, 0.25. So it has to be something like microgram per microliter or something like molar. So it's
the microgram. It is used microgram.
Can you get what I'm trying to say is that simply saying 1 microliter doesn't tell you how much compound is there unless you tell the concentration. So that is one thing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and one more thing is in case of A549, so you have treated the cell with you have treated A549 with different fractions of this cordycepin.
Actually, sir, different fractions are used for the treatment of this A549 cells on the different concentration of like 0.25, 0.5 and 1 microliter and 2 microliter. Use the concentration for the check the viability of cells.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe
Can I ask
one
another
point.
question?
Yeah, one thing is maybe you can it's better to use a concentration rather than just volume, because 1
Okay,
microliter
okay.
or 2 microliter is just volume.
Okay, sir.
That will be fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I
Okay.
ask a question? Can I take over?
Okay.
Saurav, I just want to know
Ye-
for the MTTSA what cell line you have used.
Yes, sir. Hello.
For MTTSA, what cell line?
Ye-
For MTTSA, what cell line
Yes,
did
sir.
you use?
Cell line,
Sir,
cell line.
cancer cell line use.
Which cell line you use?
See,
The result.
what cell line did you use for MTTSA,
Yes,
and
sir.
what cell line did you use for your cytotoxicity?
Sir,
Which cell?
A549, the cancer cell line used for the MTTSA.
The A549 cancer line is a lung cancer cell line. Actually,
Yeah,
it is a
yeah.
very resistant cell line. Actually, it is very resistant to various.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Usually, MTTSA actually normally people use zero cell line.
Okay.
Okay. So I just was thinking, because that is cell site, because the vero cell lines are very sensitive assay, so that will tell you the actual cytotoxicity of your compound. Okay, and
Okay.
then when you treat with the A549 cell, then what you have, the ratio of that will tell you exactly how good your compound is in terms of toxicity to the normal human tissue and toxicity to your target type. But just one question: what made you to choose A549 cell line? Was it easily available, or it was
Not, sir. It is not easily available, but my friend is working at AIMS Bhopal, and he has helped me.
No, A549 cell line is very easily available, very sturdy cell line.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Saurabh. Excellent presentation, and I am very much proud of you. Thank you.